Welcome back to Tobago Updates, Youth Wednesdays here this morning on our morning show. We continue our budget talks this morning with our panelist that is present this morning. That is Mr. Ajay Alleyne. Good morning to you, Mr. Alleyne.
Hi, good morning.
You know, Ajay is always raring to go and always has, those inputs that we really need to hear on the budget and, of course, anything relating to our government. All right, so we do welcome Ajay here this morning. All right, so Ajay, what are your general thoughts on the budget?
Okay, so interestingly for me, my first thought of it was fear was reasonable. I mean, those are initial thoughts, as I would say. Because when you begin to go through the speeches and the presentations, the devil usually is in the details in some of these things. And following that initial response, there were a few areas I began to question a little bit. In terms of, well, from being at Tobago, first and foremost, I was happy to see the increase. But sometimes it's not just the increase, but how we manage the increase and how we could generate more income off of that larger amount that was allocated.
All right. So you mentioned he jumps right into that that part of the budget that everybody's really focusing on, and that is the greater Tobago allocation that was offered. Yeah. So what do you think, or where do you think that allocation should really target the most?
You see, the Secretary of Finance has an extremely difficult task, as I would always say, because to manage finances where we always run a deficit is a challenge, and I know we have outstanding overheads existing. So in my perspective, I think we would see a lot of the business community rushing to get payments that would have not been made over the years. But we now have to balance it among divisions. We now have to balance the expenditure as well as paying off the debts, paying off the overdrafts as well in some cases, so we don't incur additional debt. But I really would love to see more money go into exportation. I know the Secretary had also mentioned prior to the actual presentation that they no longer are interested in heavily funding startups, but they want to provide more technical support because a number of these businesses that would have access the grants and so on through the BDU, some are non-existent and some are experiencing serious difficulties. So I think more funding should go into providing technical support, into pushing exportation. I mean, I want to see Cove utilized. So the new road that they built for me, connecting that Tobago local road, is like the rivulet to the Point Lisas industrial estate. So I want to see goods flowing straight from Cove, straight onto the airport, straight out for exportation.
Okay. Now I'm happy that you mentioned the fact that BDU and these enterprises providing funding for businesses, and then when you look at it, sometimes the businesses aren't thriving and they're focusing mainly on the technical support. I think that's something that's also crucial as well, because if it is you're giving someone who is now starting a business for the first time, I know usually BDU provides training. So there's training that you have to go to when they are providing you with this funding. Now, as it relates to business and the budget and stuff like that, how do you see the technical training that they would be providing helping in as compared to the finances that they would just give to the businesses rather than just giving them?
I would have observed a pattern looking around, seeing a number of the younger businesses, and sometimes it would feel like if persons were accessing the funding to start up, to say I have a business or to register a business, and a number of these individuals are teacher employees. So I believe if we focus on providing that technical training, they would see where I can earn more than a teacher salary, quote unquote, and my business has the ability to take me international, take me global. So when you look at programs like this group, the Joe Fields Enterprises, so you would see where that level of expansion is coming. They're getting the ability to travel, to tap into new markets, to even earn foreign exchange, which is a serious challenge globally and in our Trinidad and Tobago space. So I think that focus on business expansion, and I think as Tobagonians, I would always say we need to get out of this small-minded mindset. We need to remove this term small and medium businesses because I think it traps the mindset of a lot of us, and we always think small business. I could deliver, I could provide small products, and we don't think expansion. So I always believe that we need to eliminate the small business or the medium business mindset and just think business. I think that will help Tobagonians and a whole see. Yes, our population might be small. Yes, our economy may look small, but we have a whole world to tap into.
Because we're also seeing that the THA is the primary employer of a lot of the people on Tobago. So when it says we focus on investing in our businesses and not just from the government point of view, but also from the citizens' point of view, the persons who want to go into business, when we start coming out of that box and looking at business as something that is wide and far-reaching, that you could go to New York, you could go to Europe, you could go to Asia and export your products in that way, that is also a way of adding back to the economy here in Trinidad and Tobago, and not just Tobago.
Not necessarily that alone. You know. I remember having a conversation with the chief early into his term, and I was explaining to him that I believe we need to change some of the rules that govern the way the BDU operates. So if I give you a BDU grant, one of the things that I think should have been essential is employment. So over the next year or 2 years, you must employ somebody from the community. In order for you to employ someone and pay your bills, you must have a high quality product. If the employee is not giving you work of high quality or a top standard, you're going to fire them. So it will drive that level of independence. It will drive that level of, I don't want to say pride, but pride. Because I have a colleague of mine who recently went to Barbados. And he was saying, from the time you walk, it's service. So you might be late or 30 minutes late for a taxi, and the taxi driver face is not screwed up. He's like, bro, we understand this Caribbean time, you could get applied. And because of that culture, you find it, you feel easier to tip. You feel more compelled to spend more freely because you're getting service for it. And I think we as Tobagonians also, we need to find ways to win off of the teacher and win off of the national government. Because far too often you always say, central government didn't give you this or we ain't get that. I think Tobagonians as a whole, we need to, 1, support local, 2, think macro, and 3, realize that if we always dependent on the teacher will always be dependent on the central government, and we're not creating any change in our system.
Okay, so we know that the super went down. Renessa said that she's really happy about the super, but you're saying that if that is the case in terms of, we get something good, it has to be a balancing act. So what do you think is on the other side of that scale?
No, but I think, you see, we have some clever ministers and so on governing, Because when you really look at the budget, you have to give and you have to take from somewhere. And I got the impression that it was taking from the rich and giving to the poor.
Okay.
But the problem in doing that is the rich usually don't absorb some of these costs. I know some of the governing bodies are beginning to say we will absorb some of the costs. I heard the Petroleum Dealers Association. I'm not too sure if the Tobago gas stations are part of it, but they are saying they will absorb that particular cost. But how would that affect us, the regular traveler? How would that affect persons like myself who probably doesn't have a vehicle as yet and are traveling? Does it mean that we're going to see a drop in maxi taxi fares? Is it that it's going to cost $8 from Crown Point to Scarborough instead of $9? So these are some of the conversations we have to have. Also, we see it coming in the NIS area. The issue of the rental is something that I think needs to be explained a lot more as young professionals.
Yes.
Because we need to know how that's going to affect the students. How is that going to affect myself, who probably might be looking for a wife soon and looking forward to get our own apartment and start a family? How is this rental fee going to be applied? Is it just going to be for the massive enterprises? Is it just going to be that the TH would have to pay more in rent? Because we know they are one of the largest commercial renters on the island.
Right.
So we really have to begin to, as I said, the devil in the details, and I look forward to standing finance committee.
Now, one of my main things about all of the budget presentation was the implementation. And I know they spoke about the land for the landless and more affordable loans and lower interest rates for young people who want to have a family.
Yes.
What are your thoughts and your views on that, and how do you think is the best way for them to implement something
So
like
you
this?
spoke to implementation, but it's critical because a lot of these things sound nice on paper, they looks good. But when it comes to actually implementing these programs is where we have to ask, how long would these loans be? Because we have a lot of young persons buying vehicles now.
Yes.
10 years loan, you pay a small amount of money. By the time a lot of us working in the teaching, for example, so our salaries is usually $5,000-$6,000. The rent is an average of $4,000 TT on average. We don't know what additional cost might come to that. The rental apartments that you are finding on the lower end, so the $2,500, the $1,500 rent, are places where you wonder if fire service would approve some of those buildings. The buildings are heated, the buildings are hot. You have no proper exit. So it's, how do we really figure it out? I mean, we have to ask, as I said, the devil would be in the details, and we really need to pay keen attention to how they intend to implement these programs. I mean, I love when I heard the cost of construction material went down, because I mean, I have building under construction.
Right.
But then you also need to look at it on the next end. Is it that the shipment in between Trinidad and Tobago, these guys will now say, oh, we could make a profit. So the prices don't change. Is that we're going to see a drop in the cost of cement? So, I mean, this is a real technical document. I must say the minister did a master class in presenting. It almost felt like I'm looking at a spoken word presentation. I mean, it was one of the more entertaining budgets to listen to. But we really need to pay attention to some of these key indicators, and as Tobagonians as well, we need to ask, how is this going to directly affect us? Is it that we're going to see a drop in inter-island transportation prices? Even the custom duties as well was very interesting because that mixed with alcohol. And I had a friend of mine who used to work at the Ministry of Finance. He went on to work for the IMF. He recently came back from the Netherlands. And some of the things I saw in this budget is things he told me 8 years ago. Raising the cost of importing external alcohol. When he would push the local alcohol business or the winemaking industry to skyrocket, there's a new business opportunity. But also it would help to offset some of the impacts that alcohol has. Because we usually spend a lot of money in syrup, a lot of money in our healthcare, treating with lung disease, with different types of cancers caused by these same tobacco products as well as alcohol.
Yeah.
So how do we really balance? So that increase could help. It also would help in the social support programs. So we'd find a way, guys, I'm not bashing you, I'm a big men advocate. However, when we don't take home the money to our wives to see about our children and we spend it at the bars, our same wives would go back to the big House of Assembly or to the state for social support. So it's a kind of attempt to balance off.
Right. One of the things that we saw, or people are looking forward to, is the opening of the airport. Ajay, breathe. Right. The opening of the airport. Right. I just had a question come in. After such a long time of not having direct flights from the US to Tobago, how do you see this impact in a negative or positive light?
Okay, so you just played a ball right into my garden. You bowled me a Yorker, and unfortunately I may have to hit you out of the park because my course of study is aviation, so I have a certificate in aviation tech. And when this whole airport scenario happened, I was actually studying at the time. So one of the former directors of civil aviation, who was one of my lecturers, we literally went through how this would work and how it would have affected us. As well as my property was at the middle of this whole airport fiasco. So I was relocated due to that process. So I understand the impact a new airport would have. The problem would now be sustainability. The problem would be approvals. Because from my little bit of knowledge, you cannot have a jetway, a clear jetway, within a distance where I can pelt a stone and break a glass window in it. How am I to get FAA approval? How am I to get IQ approvals? Which means I will have to do more relocation, which means we put more strain on the THA. But I understand the impact of it. How could you advertise for me or you have in your ads an airport that carries at least 5 or 6 jetways and I'm only seeing 2 installed? So these are some of the technicalities that we need to look into. I have a colleague of mine who I just met yesterday. He's based in New York, studying aviation as well. And when he looked at it, he said, but when the FAA comes to Tobago, what are they going to say concerning the safety requirements of that airport? And I worked at the airport for a period of times. I would not share some of the obvious safety risk. But I think we need to understand it's good, but we as the citizens need to enjoy it. We have heard questions concerning the concessionaires at the airport. We haven't heard word on it yet. We haven't heard the business chamber in Tobago say, well, guys, we are happy to announce that we have secured 5 booths at the airport for local products. Or we're going to have the restaurant that is going to be owned by a Tobagonian, or 5 of us have come together. And we're going to see Chef Arthur Patrick, for example, running the airport. You see, an airport is a mall with the accommodations for the taking off and landing of an aircraft. Are we going to treat this airport like that? Or is it going to be the typical glass building? We're going to have all the conglomerates coming in and taking all of the money and go back out. Is that we're going to have Starbucks eating all of our foreign exchange and I can't get like a 500 to go Barbados? So we really need to break it down on the micro level.
Now you spoke about the airport being a mall, and I know part of the budget they were speaking about the tourism aspect. Now it's one of my personal views or things that I've observed is that whenever someone steps onto the airport in your country, there should be some way or form of them wanting to come back, even if they're just passing through. And I've always said, why is it that the booths within our airports, or when tourists come, why is it that they're not stopping to say, okay, let me pre-book a vacation for maybe Carnival coming or Easter coming? And I'm really, really pleased that you just mentioned the fact that our airport should be like a mall for people when they come here. So we need to really work on the infrastructure and the way that we are doing things. We need to not just look at things and the surface. We need to go deeper. We need to look at all the ramifications and everything that follow coming out of that.
Right. What I focused on, I'm a foodie. I'm a foodie, right? So you mentioned that Starbucks, we have Starbucks and all these foreign people coming to occupy our stores in the mall. or mall for taking off and landing, right? What are your thoughts on having the locals? Because I hardly see, I don't know if any of you all have seen, you all can correct me, a tourist landing and being able to eat a bacon saltfish or something of the local cuisine nature. Let me put it like that.
So, you see, it all comes back to what we want and what we ask for.
Okay.
As a people and how we provide service. Because if you are coming through, for example, the new terminal, and you smell local coffee, chances are you're going to want to try because it's already in the aroma. So when you look at aviation, there are some technical things that they would do. So you would realize where there's certain aspects of the airport where you would find tile and you'll find carpet. As simple as it might seem, it plays on your psychology. When you go to a casino, you realize very rare you would find tiles in a casino, you'd always see carpeted floors. So some of these small elements would play into how we design an airport. So usually after you clear security, you will meet carpet, it feels a lot more calm, you don't feel to line up because of the psychology that goes into it. So I think that's one of the things we need to play on as well. I think we're focusing a little too much on air transportation. I spoke to a yacht that was moored in Pigeon Point recently, and she was saying we have some of the lowest fees for clearances. And she was saying that's a whole industry we can tap into. Usually our fees are less than Barbados and some of the other islands. That's why she enjoyed the Caribbean region. It's feasible, and then we have one of the best maritime repair areas in Chagaramas. We know UTT is doing an excellent work down there, and a number of Tobagonians are doing excellent in the maritime industry. I could also tell you, I have seen a plan or a draft for a marina in Plymouth, drawn by a Tobagonian. The proposal was offered to a Tobagonian chief secretary, and I wouldn't go further to say where it went or what happened.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the airport being opened next year? Now, I know it's a distance between the ribbon cutting ceremony, and we're looking at 2026 being the actual opening. And
also, are we speaking about the practical opening? Let's be specific.
The operation of the airports. Flights coming in and out as well as people.
You see, it comes back again to some technical conversations because we can have an airport open. We only make money simply because it's new. But I mean, when you look at aviation bloggers like Sam Chewy and some of these types of persons who's heavily into that, mentor aviation, is it that we have engaged these guys to come and tour the airport to trigger that? Are we having conversations with Emirates, with Etihad? Are we looking for these types of international partnerships in the industry? Or are we now going to say, what are we going to do with the old terminal? Do you know that at PRCO there's a limit that you allow student pilots to fly into? And there's a number of aviation schools based in Trinidad. Why can't we not have a partnership? Use the old terminal as an FBO. You create that level of commerce. Persons who study aviation are big money spenders. It's not the industry for quote-unquote the small man because of the amount of money involved. So why can't we have students come in and study aviation in Tobago? You could fly around the island, we could do tours, you could fly to Grenada, St. Vincent, out of Tobago because we don't have that level of traffic. And it's not just tourists coming and booking a full trip. They live on the island of Tobago. And that's why we need to create. The parents would come and spend time here. They would go to the rainforest. So we need to look for not just flying and out tourists, but a long-term system. We could probably partner with Embry-Riddle. And I mean, I just think we're big. Probably I'm living on a small island and my mind is just too big for the island. We need to think global.
Now, I know initially you mentioned the way how the airport is currently situated. It shouldn't be a situation where it's a stone throw away. If someone pelts a bottle or a stone, it hits something and causes something to the effect of safety issues. Now, how do you think that the government should go about dealing with this situation in the event that, as you said, if FAA is supposed to come and give the approvals or such? How do you think they should work around this or start being proactive to ensure that some of these things are mitigated before that? Okay,
so first, if you look at how the scenario treated with PRCO and Oropun Gardens, I think that's one of the better examples. Probably fortunately for those residents and not us who went through the previous ordeal, we have a new administration, so they will probably be a little more lenient towards it. But I want to see the developments that were planned for the affected residents completed finally properly. So at least they could move from one building into the next. I think that would help. And we also need to prepare Tobagonians for what is to come. So I don't want to have a situation where we have a new airport opening and we are bringing up technicians from Trinidad to treat with a jetway or to fix with it. Or we have the most of the senior staff coming from Trinidad. As Tobagonians, when we have a different feel, we have a different touch to Trinidadians. we are a little more calm, a little more loving, we are a little more playful, we are a little more slow in some areas, which is good and which is what they like. So I think we need to begin to prepare Tobagonians for what is to come. I think we need to even employ persons in the area as well, so they would understand the importance of it, and they would also be able, even if they see things that may look suspicious, feel comfortable enough to report it, to say, okay, this individual looks suspicious, or this package looks suspicious, and they would understand the risk that goes with being in the aviation industry.
Right. So we have been talking a lot about, you know, that one aspect, the airport. We also touched on, you know, the positives that we would see coming out of the budget, as per a lot of people in Tobago's opinion, right? Our 60 crabs in the barrel are happy for what more food, yeah? But what about the negatives, or what people would term negative from the budget? That is the NIS increase, or we're looking as well as the, I don't know how, well, a lot of working people may say that it is a negative. That is the raising of the age from 60 to 65 in terms of working. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts on those?
You see, in basic economics, they will tell you about opportunity costs. So in order to gain something, you have to lose something.
Okay.
And I am also of the view, those persons who are nearing current retirement is over a time period. As we say again, the devil is in the details. So it's over a time period. So persons in our generation who would have to treat with that, we now would have to know how to think into it. We now would have to be able to take out our pension plans a little bit earlier and kind of think forward. But sometimes to keep things going, you have to sacrifice. I think it's a reasonable sacrifice, is a reasonable implementation. Instead of having the NIB crash completely, or instead of us going bankrupt. Because what you find happening now is the NIB is paying out more than they are actually receiving.
Yeah.
And I think even tax collection is something we need to be a little more prudent on and enforcing it as well. So it's not just creating employment, but we also have to eliminate corruption in the system. I mean, I don't know how we would be doing that by having stricter enforcement officers. And we had to pay tax, that's the reality. Two, I think we need to implement the rental board as well to help monitor how rent's going. So they would begin to realize that there are properties of a particular standard, and it would help as well. But I think sometimes as the younger generation, we have to bite the bullet going forward, because we can't just think about ourselves, but probably for our children and for the future of Trinidad and Tobago. If we are really patriotic, we wouldn't just put on the t-shirt and wait for football, but we will say, you know what, we're going to bite a little bit of the bullet now and save it for the future.
Now, I heard your, I know Renessa is coming with a hot question, and I have a feeling I know where that question is going. But you mentioned how we need to pull a little tighter rein on the taxes that we need to pay. Now, do you think it's a fair trade-off, or should I say enough padding? Because remember, this government said that property tax may or may not be a thing, right? So if it is that it is not a thing, do you think it's enough padding in terms of taxes or the revenue coming in to be enough for the country to move forward?
You see, I don't think it's a matter of enough, it would be a matter of enforcement.
Okay.
Because there are a number, and we have seen, I mean, tax levies, we have seen a number of moratoriums, and so we always have been very compliant. I think we need to go beyond the compliance stage and begin to push enforcement. I think that would also help going forward. But generally, as a people, we have to sacrifice. I mean, it's not nice, it's not pleasant as a young professional, but we really have to see. And if you see things going wrong, even as public servant or as members, we need to also give service that's worth it, make sure people feel comfortable. And if we see things or infringement, we need to find ways to report it, even if it means using like the Freedom of the Information Act, where you can anonymously ask some of these things. We need to find ways. So if you see something that's wrong, say something, even in these fields and in these areas.
No, you said I had a very packed question, but you basically asked it in terms of the taxes and stuff, and you gave the answer. Because it's always a matter of enforcing, because we have the policies, we have the things in place. But why is it such an issue for us to enforce and ensure that the people who are actually supposed to be paying these taxes are doing what they're supposed to do?
I think it comes back to a matter of culture, because generally we have had a couple administrations over the years that have been very lenient, very friendly, and particularly in the Tobago case, we have a gimme type of culture. We have a I don't care what happened, just pay me. And a lot of the times that is what creates the problem, because we don't understand that there are implications to it happening. And I think that is where we need to begin to create that shift. I think, to be honest with you, we need to start with budget in school. Because even as we are discussing the budget here, it is an estimate. And then we also have to wait for a reprioritization. So we also have to hear now what are we going to miss because we are short of what, 9%. So we now need to know, okay, what are we going to lose based on that? And then we also need to sit down and go back to having family discussions in terms of budgeting. So our young children need to understand this would mean you're not going to have your $5 for snack anymore. Or it's going to mean when I give you the $20 to go to school and I ask you how you spend the $20. If you can't give me an account for that 20, you're going to get 5. So we need to start to teach these principles from a lot younger.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I always say to myself, when we look at some of the things that are taken away or removed from the budget or we have to cut back on, usually hear public outcry. And while people are justified in how they feel, when you look at your own personal expenditure and things you have to do on a day-to-day basis, on a monthly basis, there are things you usually have to cut back on. And I think we focus on the budget from personal views and what you want to gain as a person rather than looking at it from a national perspective. And you mentioned earlier the whole concept of patriotism. Are we really being patriotic when it comes to looking at how the budget unfolds? Sometimes are we really thinking about everyone or are we just thinking about ourselves?
Correct. You have a very, very valid contribution. But I would also want to commend the Minister for dealing with the issue of period poverty as well. Because I've heard a number of conversations concerning it. And I think it's a very good move as well. And I want to see corporate Trinidad and Tobago support him as well in that matter and help in that regard as well in terms of that period poverty scenario. I mean, this is an opportunity for us to show how much we love Trinidad and Tobago. So this is not just celebrating a TKR win, but this is us being able to say, you know what, I'm going to travel with the bus instead of catch a car, simply to allow a child to go to school. So some of these small things is the areas that we need to cut back. Because one wonderful basket, if we could celebrate $1 reducing gas, we could simply cut back $1 in other areas as well to manage our finances.
Earlier I was talking about agriculture and I speak a lot with the older generation. There was one person in particular that spoke about Tobago feeding both Trinidad and Tobago at one point. And I know they included in the budget, they were talking about agriculture and bringing it back to the forefront. Give us some of your views on that.
You see, agriculture is an area that we haven't tapped into properly because we haven't had the ability for exportation as well. Because I've always advocated for having a Kariri or a FDA approved lab on the island of Tobago. Because when we send products to Trinidad to test, we have a long delay. We have products in Tobago being produced by Tatco, the waffles, the flour from breadfruit and these types of products. The number one kickback for us in Tobago is the ability to export. I mean, I would like to see where we have a massive plant in Cove and breadfruit not wasting on Tobago. Or when persons come out, we see on the menus are breadfruit waffles from Tobago. Even on the airlines and stuff, I want to see local wines being served in first class. When you're coming to Tobago, I want to see heritage productions as in-flight entertainment. I mean, we really need to think some of these small things would help, but agriculture, we have a lot of potential, but exportation has been our number one challenge. And I realized that my favorite secretary has a very good relationship with the Minister of Agriculture. So I'm really expecting to see a lot coming forward in that direction. And I think once we have that ability to package and put the product, Tobago is a brand. If somebody in Cuba could tell me they're selling fish from Tobago, when I ask where, they could tell me the fish is in Mason Hall. It shows you that brand Tobago itself carries value. So we just need to find avenues and ways to tap into that market and to tell the world, we open for business. If we can come to you, you can come to get it, we could send it to you. Use Amazon. Use these types of means where we could get the products there. I want to see our products in Walgreens, in Walmart, in Costco going forward.
You spoke about Kariri. One, just a second. You spoke about Kariri and Kariri being able to set up within Tobago. Now, I've been to a Kariri workshop before. And I want to ask you the question, do you think the reason why we don't have a Kariri facility here is because we don't have a lot of people interested in investing or being a part of that?
I would make that statement. Sorry. But in the interest of time, I was going to look for the THA Act. Kariri is one of the services that is supposed to be provided in Tobago. It is a 7th schedule matter, if I remember correctly. Over the years, why have we not seen that presence of Kariri here if the law provides for it? I am not implying that anybody is breaking the law, but if Tobagonians take time and you read the 5th, 6th, and 7th schedule of that THA Act, you will see where a number of these services are supposed to be provided here. We don't know why they haven't been. So it's not a matter of Tobagonians wanting to be involved or not being open. If the opportunity is made available, we have the products here. We have the professionals. We just need to show them where the money is, and they will go behind the money.
All right. Ajay, we want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Youth Wednesdays on Tobago Updates, our faithful panelists, for being with us here this morning. You have a lot of views, and I know you will be willing to come back again. So viewers, we promise you a continuation of this show next week. Of course, you can tune in at the hour of 7 o'clock sharp. It is now 8:03, and unfortunately, we have to bring Ajay down to an end. All right? But thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for joining us on the Youth Wednesdays on Tobago Updates. Renessa, I know that you have a lot of burning questions still. Ajay, I know you have a lot of burning answers to give to the audience. But however, we have to bring it to an end. Viewers, we ask you to continue to be with us as we go into our Good Morning Tobago show. We have our favorite, or Ajay's favorite secretary here this morning to speak to us on those budget talks. All right, so before we go on to GMT, we just want to encourage you all to share the live, share the live, share the live.